Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Springfield Township Board of Trustees meeting. It is March 11th, 2014, and it's approximately 5:35 p.m. Mr. Burning, may you please have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Vernon? Present. Ms. McFarland?
Present.
Mr. Arnold?
Present.
All present?
Next, I would ask that everyone join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first thing that we have this evening is Mr. Burning, our fiscal officer. Do you have a report?
Yes, I do. I'll write everyone's name down. What I do is I request a motion to approve the receipts, warrants, payroll expenditures, updated and current revenues and reports for the period. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Secondly, I want to let everyone know that financial reports are available for viewing at the administration offices during the week, the regular business hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burning. Next, moving on to departmental action and discussion items. Mr. Hennenkamp, do you have a report for us this evening?
I do. Just two action items. The first is an item that we discussed at our work session a couple of weeks ago. This had to do with, we became aware of an opportunity in the state capital improvement program that it went through 1928. They are now making available another round for projects for communities that are interested in applying for loan projects. These are interest-free loans, as we discussed, and kind of talked about how the township has utilized this over the years. In some cases where we didn't get the grant, they offered us the loan, we took advantage of that. And we spent a considerable amount of time at this work session looking at some potential options of other projects and thinking we want to apply for them. All told, it's staff's recommendation at this point that we move forward with just a one loan application as part of this sort of additional funding. We've got, I think, $6 million total available for communities to apply for. And the project will be the McKelvey Road Stormwater Project. We have already received some funding through grants for this project. Initially, we got a $18,000 grant from the Stormwater District, and that $18,000 was for engineering of the project. And then subsequent to that, we received $75,000 for a grant to actually for construction of the project. So the entire project is estimated at about $208,000. So obviously the 75 doesn't take us the whole way, and so we thought it made sense to go ahead and make the loan application for the skip round for that particular project. And so that's kind of our recommendation. So you're talking about, roughly about $133,350 based on estimates of what's remaining, the funds that we would need. So that's the amount that we'll be applying for. Again, that's just the estimate of the project. It hasn't been bid, obviously it hasn't even been engineered yet. But that would be the estimate, and that would give us on a 20-year loan an annual payment of about $6,657 per year for 20 years.
Okay. Well, I know that it's been a real issue up on McKelvey Road when it rains, and it's not only impacts the road, but also adjoining property owners in the area. And since we have the $75,000 from the Stormwater District, I think it makes sense to try and secure the other funding and get this problem taken care of.
Yeah, and as well as from a safety perspective. And then when you look at the property, when the water is sitting there that long, there's going to be some problems related to that, with erosion and everything else. So safety for that community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know we looked at a lot of other projects, and while we think we could be successful in one application, you get to that point, given our current financials, it's just how much money can you go out? I mean, this is, as we mentioned, interest-free money, so, you know, it's not that we're carrying debt service, any additional debt service on it, but it does, you know, do a project for today, and it's something we have to fund for the next 20 years. So we wanted to keep that sort of to a minimum, and so we're looking at our financials.
Correct. All right, do we have a motion to proceed with the loan application as recommended in skip round 28B?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the only other action item I have is we have received a copy of a liquor permit request. This is a transfer from SA LLC, doing business at Finneytown Drive-Thru at 944 West North Bend Road, and the transfer will be to Gazelle LLC, same address. And Chief, I don't know if there are any objections to that transfer, so it'd be a recommendation that we send the customary letter forward to the state revenue control saying there's no objections to the transfer.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item I have is just a quick discussion item on our permanent appropriations. That is Resolution 18/2014, which is later in the agenda. But very few alterations really from our temporary to our permanent appropriations at this time. Just maybe probably the biggest change in terms of dollar amount is our appropriation for salt. We have appropriated $130,000. Obviously, given the winter that we've got and the fact that we've used roughly, John, about 4,400 tons of salt, I think that's probably a record for salt utilization. The dome is roughly 5,000 tons, so that tells you we've got about 600 tons left. Typically, I think last year we had about 2,200 tons is what we utilized. So we purchased 2,200 tons, so we're going to be right about double that amount. So we doubled the appropriation. We had $130,000 appropriated, and so we've increased that amount to $260 in anticipation of what our needs are going to be. Now, we don't know, obviously, what the price might be, and that could require us to do some additional supplemental appropriations after it's bid. But at this point, you know, we know for sure that we're going to need double.
Don't use it all more, right?
And that comes out of our permissive motor vehicle license fund, is where we've increased that. There's been, the other major increase would be to our TIF district fund, where we make payments to the school districts. When we did the TIF, when it was instituted years ago, was through agreement we entered back, gosh, I think it was 2004, to make both Lincoln and Finneytown School Districts whole. There was not a payment made this October, which we typically would have, so the TIF district has more money in it than typically at this time, but that's why you're seeing the additional payments. So we make 3 payments this year as opposed to making 1 last year, so that's why there's the increase in the TIF. And the only other major change would be in the police district, where we've increased some range cleaning. Chief, I think you've located a company that in the long run, spending some money to do some spraying in the shooting range will save us down the road.
Yes.
And so we're allocating more money in that fund. The rest of them are very small, and those all have to do with some contracted services, line items to deal with possibly the purchase of a new township ID maker. Our system's about 10 years old and doesn't operate very well, so we're probably going to be in the market for a new one, given that one being at the last legs. Other than that, really everything's pretty much the same as done as temporary.
Well, one thing for certain, we're not the only ones struggling with salt prices that are going to be increasing. And, you know, when you look at communities like up east, they're preparing for another big snowstorm, and I think Chicago's preparing, and they are just on the edge as far as their salt supplies. So hopefully we don't get anything near what they're predicting for those two meetings.
Keep your fingers crossed.
I hope we don't get any.
I agree.
I've had enough. I love snow, but I've had enough.
I'm snow weird.
Yes.
So anyway, just that agenda, or that resolution, rather, we later in the agenda, just like to mention that. And then also wanted to mention, and I did briefly mention this, that we do have the certificate from the state of Ohio, Secretary of State for the Township's Community Improvement Corporation. We did receive that a few weeks ago, we mentioned that at our last work session. So the next step in the process will be to draft our code of regulations and get the first meeting scheduled, which I would anticipate we would look to do that sometime in April. Very good. Moving forward on that. Kim, I'm looking for you over there.
I know, I'm
You should
yeah.
bring us up to date on what's going on the community events and programs.
Thank you. As you know, we've been kind of back-to-back with community events. We had an event last weekend that we had 250 people in attendance that went out very well. This coming up weekend, we're a host site for the Macy's Art Sampler, and that's a free event starting at 11:30 and will go until 1:30. Our Mom Prom is sold out, and then we jump right into April. We've got, again, back-to-back events. We bring in Shakespeare. We've got our Good Catch Community Day, the Reds game on April the 14th. Playhouse in the Park is coming on April the 18th. The Arts Council has its dinner theater on the 25th. And then we move right into the Great American Cleanup on May 10th. So very busy.
Thanks, Kim. I know the board has copies of the departmental activity reports, so unless we have a question on that, I'm going to, maybe I'll skip to the last item on the agenda before we go into the corporation study, which will take a little bit. Over the past few weeks, I've been in contact with an individual who has been interested in providing a bid to the township on solid waste collection. This would be basically picking up garbage for township residents. And he then later, after several conversations, forwarded a copy of a proposal to me. And I just wanted to bring this to the board's attention. This is an item that we discussed at least twice that I can remember, probably over the last 5 or 6 years. Initially, we had made some contact. As the board's aware, the township doesn't provide any type of contracted solid waste service. In other words, residents are free to choose their own contractor, and we do not have a role in that. They choose to pick the competition and choose who they want. Several years ago, we did contact Lumpy to see if we made them sort of the sole provider of the township and offer the contract, which we could do by law. We could say, hey, the township's, we're going to use this particular company, and the residents are going to be limited to that particular company. And what we were trying to do at that time is see if by doing that there would be any savings to the individual residents. If we could get a better deal per household than they were getting on their own. And really, kind of summarizing the response from Rumpke was that unless we were willing to take on the billing for that service and the delinquencies, any delinquencies where a particular household didn't pay and the township would take on that liability and that collection duty, then there really wasn't any savings to be had. The savings were very minimal. Otherwise, the board at that time didn't feel like it was worth pursuing because obviously we didn't want to take on that function. We didn't have the staff to do it, and we thought in the long run it wouldn't save the township any money. It might save an individual resident, but it would result in higher costs to the quote-unquote township government, and therefore it might result in higher taxes ultimately to them. So we didn't pursue it at that time for that reason. Without the billing, there was literally no savings unless we were willing to take on those responsibilities. A few years after that, there was an opportunity through the Center for Local Government. They were doing a solid waste consortium to bring communities together, essentially to do the same type of thing, but it was kind of garbage aggregation, if you will. And we we spent considerable amount of time looking at that process, attending those meetings, all the way kind of to the point where we had to make a decision as to whether we wanted to join or not. And while the savings might have been a little bit better with that consortium, there was a lot of unknowns and a lot of it wasn't guaranteed, because you didn't know until it was bid, which you really didn't. So we didn't pursue it at that time. This particular situation is a company called 5-Star Waste Services. They, to the best of my knowledge and brief investigation, don't provide this service on this scale to any community. And so I'd be concerned based just whether they'd be able to take on a township the size of ours with roughly 15,000 households. And we had to bid this anyway. But I guess when I'm bringing this to the board is just to sort of double check that you're not looking to pursue this at this time. I don't think that there's savings to be had. This would be something, like I said, we have to put out the bid. And I'm not sure that we have, especially in our financial situation, even 5 years ago, we had the wherewithal to be able to take this responsibility on. This particular vendor is saying we wouldn't have to do the billing. So, I'd be kind of curious as to where the savings are coming from. But it would be something we'd have to bid, and we have to go through a bid process, and as any bid process, we would have requirements for responsible bidders. They would have to be honorable and meet all the requirements that we do for any bidding company, whether this company could meet those requirements or not, I don't know. But just thought I'd bring this back up because it's been some time since we've had this discussion. I just want to confirm that our position is the same on this matter.
Well, unfortunately, the savings are not that significant to begin with. So, to make everybody use one person, like you said, we have to bid it out. So, I don't know that the savings are there. I don't know if we're having a big problem with the price of solid waste removal. If it was a sewer thing, we might try to do that.
Right.
The
I think it gives our residents also an option of choices, which service they want to use. And I haven't in a while heard of anyone complaining about the current services that they're using.
Mine's
And,
only like $19 a month.
yeah.
And I read the material that 5-Star Waste Services gave us, and the one thing that they put in here, kind of conclusion, is they're not bondable. They can't post a performance bond. So I think this is kind of a moot point. And
Yeah, I bring it up because we got this particular proposal,
Right.
so I wanted to be able to respond, so that I had a phone conversation with this gentleman, kind of explained our history and what we've done, and he was pretty persistent that he still thought this was a good offer. And so I said, I'll review with the board if they want to go a different direction. And I'm not so much reviewing their proposal as much as the whole concept of, is it something we want to look at? I think we're always looking at ways to try to save residents money any way we can. We've investigated this throughout the years, and I think it's something we should continue to do from time to time, but I just,
I think the timing is not
yeah,
right.
the timing is probably
Not right.
tough, and I'm not sure where you're going to see the savings given the building responsibility.
And the non-bondable was a problem because a friend of mine dropped a trailer on his car and they had to give him over $1 million. If he's not bonded, where's he going to come up with $1 million?
Right, and that's what I'm saying, I'm not necessarily looking at his
Right,
proposal.
but whether
Because we couldn't accept this even if
That
we
would be
wanted.
anyone's.
Right, so this would be required to bid. And I'll explain that to them.
There's not a big,
I don't think there's a big call for it right now, and the timing's not right, I don't believe.
Okay, so that's kind of confirms
I would say no.
the position that I was suggesting. Okay.
Keep relevant for further.
But I think it's
Might be something.
reviewing it, if it
For the
makes
future.
sense, and somebody did give us something that we thought had some legs, it's something we want to continue to look at. That's a very large undertaking, and, it's not the kind of thing we want to find out a month in, that we can't, provide it can't meet the requirements. So, few months ago, I think it was back in our, I think it might have been back in our December meeting, Gwen, you had asked me at a board meeting to see if we could prepare a study, kind of looking at the option of incorporation
Yes.
for Springfield Township. In other words, if the township were to incorporate and become a city, sort of what that process would be, maybe what some of the advantages and disadvantages of that would be. And so we've done that, and this was kind of the thing we talked about preparing that study. And I think a lot of that came from some of the comments that we had at public hearings during the JED's public hearings about had we looked into incorporation. And that was even suggested, I think, by some that might be a good solution for the township. So that's what we've done. What I've tried to do is just give a very general overview. We've talked about this a little bit in some of our meetings subsequent to that December meeting. So by no means is this kind of an exhaustive study. I think if you try to hit the highlights of what the major differences would be, and I think this will demonstrate fairly clearly what the advantages and disadvantages would be if it were going to be pursued. The presentation basically talks about just a quick overview of just the general levels of government in Ohio. We're going to look at kind of what the differences, what are the major differences between the township and municipal form of government, and then specifically what would be different for Springfield Township. There are a number of different types of plans that you can have as a municipal, what the process is, and then just some general conclusions. I think everybody's familiar in the country that we have generally federal, state, county, and then we have local and special districts. This is our general government structure that we follow. When you look at the state of Ohio, there are 88 counties in the state, and for the most part, each county operates with local governments that are made up really of three different types of local governments. And those are the city form, a village form, or both city and village are known as the municipal form of government, and of course the unincorporated portion of the local government is the township form. And then we have special districts. And special districts, by example, would be schools, libraries, water, sewer districts. There are fire districts, throughout the state, throughout our region. Just looking at Hamilton County alone, there are 12 townships in the county. There are 19 cities, 18 villages, 23 school districts, and a variety of different other special purpose districts, be that as a water district or fire district, something along those lines. The general difference between township government and municipal form has to do a lot with the structure. In a township, regardless of the size of the township, there's roughly about 1,300 townships in the state of Ohio. And regardless of whether it's a very small rural township or whether it's a very large urban township like Springfield Township or Rain or Green, the structure is generally exactly the same. Where you have 3 elected board of trustees, 1 fiscal officer, the trustees serving as the legislative authority, fiscal officer more with a fiduciary responsibility of township records and township financial actions. Some townships have a township administrative position, such as mine, that serves as the chief administrative official of the townships, or directing day-to-day operations. There are some very specific requirements in ORC as to what the requirements of that position is if you choose to have it. But not all of them do. It's an elective position. It's not required. And it's an appointed position by the board, not an elected position. The board can choose whether they want to fill that position or not. What's also somewhat unique in township government is that you have responsibilities that fall into one of 3 categories. They are required responsibilities, things that the township has to do. And we talk all the time about the 2 major things is sort of cemeteries and roads, or sort of a public work function. You're permitted to do a variety of different things, such as police and fire, zoning, planning, economic development, parks, recreation, senior services. Those are permitted under Ohio law. And then there there are certain services or certain functions that townships are prohibited from performing. And for example, would be, this isn't exhaustive, the building department, water and sewer departments. There are some exceptions to that. If the county in which that township is located does not provide that service, then that township can do it. But if there's a county building department, then none of the townships in that particular county can exercise that authority. And there's others. Again, this is just kind of hitting the highlights. There's basically two types of townships. The first is what's known as a statutory township, and the authority in those townships is limited to what is specifically granted and authorized by the state, in the state statute. And the theory there is that unless something is specifically permitted, it is prohibited in statutory townships. There's limited home rule townships, and Springfield Township is a limited home rule township, where we have some increased enabling authority. We have the authority to issue civil fines in a home rule township, and also we have greater bonding and borrowing authority as a home rule township. And there's different adoption procedures for how we become a home rule township, and it's based on population. Whereas if you're between 3,500 and 5,000, it's done by petition of the electors. 10% of the electors petition, and then there's a vote at the next general election. If you're between 5 and 15,000 in population, the trustees by majority vote can put it to the electorate, and it takes place at the vote of the next general election. And for townships that are greater than 15,000, a unanimous vote of the trustees is what it takes to become a home rule township, and that, of course, is the way we became a home rule township years ago. Again, the big difference when you look at townships and you look at cities is that townships generally can only do what the state specifically authorizes them. Obviously, there's the exception I just made when we talked about limited home rule townships. And you say, generally we say, well, a limited home rule township can do whatever a city can do. That's true, except for the statute has far more specific restrictions for townships than it does for cities. So in other words, even though we're a home rule township, we can't pass income tax, except through earnings tax through JEDs or JED-Z. Even though we're a home rule township, you still have 3 trustees. You don't have a mayor, you don't have these, you can't form your own structure. So what I think I like to say is what limited home rule township allows you to do is sort of deal with the issues where the statute is silent, where there's not a specific prohibition, there's not a specific permission. That gray area is generally where the added authority for a limited home rule township is gained. The difference, and of course townships by their very nature are multi-jurisdictional. What I mean by that is we have specific services that are provided by county government, and that's not by accident, that's by design. Whitten Road is maintained by Hamilton County. There's 34 other roads in the township that are maintained by the county. We have county planning department, we have county building department. Those services are meant to be provided by the county to those unincorporated areas. In fact, that's largely the only place the county does provide those services. As we mentioned, not so much an earnings tax, but an income tax is prohibited in a township unless it's through a JED or JED-Z. Cities and villages or incorporated forms of government are home rule, and generally they can exercise any power, have any authority that they want, as long as that is not in conflict with state or federal law. So that is fundamentally the easiest way to describe probably the differences. Cities are 5,000 and above, and villages are 5,000 and below. And there's some fairly subtle differences between the city and the village, but for the most part, it's kind of the same type of structure. Looking at the municipal form of government, there are several different plans. So if you choose to become a city, there are really 4 different options of the type of city that you can be. And those are what's known as the federal plan, which is sometimes also referred to as the statutory plan. And in the federal plan, major structure is that you have a directly elected mayor who serves in an executive capacity. So that mayor has executive authority to appoint staff. He or she does not need a council to approve those. They have a lot of executive authority in the decision-making process. It is directly elected. The amount of council persons is determined by the population, and it can range from anywhere from 5 to 15, depending on all these different population thresholds. There's quite a few in there, and put them all in there. There's also something known as a commission plan, and I personally am not familiar with any city in the state of Ohio that utilizes this. I'm sure there's probably some, but I'm not familiar. And that uses a different structure where if you're less than 10,000, you have 3 commissioners. If you're more than 10,000, you have 5. And then there are direct appointments by those commissioners for certain positions. And there's very specific meeting time requirements. They meet twice a month, twice a month in legislative session and once a week in administrative session. So very unusual when you look at the different plans, and probably a good reason why they're very specific, why there isn't a lot of these around. There's also something known as the city manager plan, where you have a council. You do not have a directly elected executive, so the council serves as a board. They may have a mayor in a city manager plan, but that mayor is not directly elected. That mayor is appointed by the other council members and serves more in a ceremonial role and presides over meetings, but doesn't have any greater authority than the other council members. Under that plan, there's, again, the number of council members is determined by the population, 5 for less than 10,000, 7 between 10 and 25, and 9 if you're greater than 25. And a city manager is appointed by the council to run the day-to-day affairs of the city. That is probably the closest thing that we have right now in Springfield Township. In fact, if you look at the duties of the city manager under this plan and the duties in the statute of the township administrator, they're almost identical. With some obvious, one referring to the township, one referring to the city, but the language is almost identical in the statute. Clearly, we have 3 trustees, or a number of elected officials is smaller from a legislative standpoint, but this basically is very similar to what we operate. And then the 4th plan that's available to cities, and this is probably the most advanced and most popular and utilized quite frequently by communities around us, is what's known as the charter plan. And what this allows the city to do is kind of specifically write a charter, or almost like a constitution for their community that spells out all the things above. How many council people, whether it's going to be a directly elected mayor, whether it's going to be a strong mayor, in terms of an executive or a weak mayor being appointed by other council members, whether it's going to have a city manager, all of the offices and so forth are spelled out in that uniquely drafted charter for that community. And most of the communities have gone to this method, or a lot of them, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of them around us. Blue Ash, for example, is a charter. City of Cincinnati is a charter city. A lot of them that were statutory have even evolved into a charter and have done some aspect of it. So it's with the charter that you have the greatest degree of home rule authority, and it's with most of the charters operate under what's known as a council manager. You have council and a city manager, form of government. Responsibilities of municipal government are not unlike township government. It's what we think of as kind of the basic services. The differences, of course, is the expanded public works and or engineering type roles. You have to have either a building department or you have to provide that function. So you can contract that out. It's not like you got to have it, but you've got, the county's not doing that for a city. Health department, same type of thing. Cities have the ability to run and operate their own utilities, and they have some level of their own judicial, as you'll see, so mayor's court and things along those lines. So we try to look at what would be the differences if Springfield Township became a city. Just hit some of the basic highlights. Elected officials would be one thing that would change. There would clearly be more. We either have 7 or 9 elected officials as opposed to forward, if we, on the legislative side, unless the charter, unless we became a charter city, and that specified that there was 3. The administrative capacity, the chief administrative officer, as I said, probably wouldn't be significantly different than the way we operate today. There'd be some subtle differences, but for the most part, it's basically the same. And I think the departments that we would have would be very similar as well. Some notable exceptions where we have expanded responsibility with roads that I'll touch on in public works and engineering. Building department, health department would be 2 functions that we have to take on. A big difference in authority. The authority of a city is much greater from a taxing standpoint, specifically with regards to an income tax. A city has the opportunity and has the authority to tax income up to 1% without a vote of the electorate. So that's something that the council could vote to do. This is different than what the JEDS and the JEDZ is, because the JED is talking about earnings. With income, a city has the ability, it's not that every city does this, but you have the authority to tax all forms of income. Dividends, investments, all different types of things. The city of Wyoming is probably one of the closest municipalities that does that. Very expensive tax code, gross income, and all kinds of things are calculated. So that's different. If the township were to become a city, I don't estimate that our revenues would be significantly different than what we're proposing under a JEDS or JEDZ, for the simple reason that the vast majority of our residents don't work in Springfield Township. So they're paying that income tax if they are working in another municipality to that particular municipality. So if we offered reciprocity credit, which most communities do, most of them offer full, some of them now start a little way at that, but if we offered full, you wouldn't be capturing much more unless you expanded it to reach more on gross income and dividends and those types of things, or unless you significantly reduced or eliminated completely the reciprocity credit. And if you did that, you're talking about significant increases for the vast majority of township residents who are paying that income tax somewhere else, and then will also have to pay it here as well. But, assuming we did what is similar to most municipalities, I think our numbers would be very, very similar than what we're forecasting. In general, a city has greater authority on, because of the home rule. You just have full authority, specifically under that charter, to create whatever you need to create to handle your unique situation. So in general, yes, it does have greater authority, but because there's fewer restrictions and prohibitions. For instance, we talk about townships specifically cannot regulate billboards. We cannot prohibit the use of billboards. There's a specific statute that applies just for townships regarding that. Of course, the income tax we've talked about in the structure as well. Another area would be on the criminal code. Cities have the authority to adopt their own criminal code and some individual laws, and this is handled through the mayor's court. That local criminal code allows them to enforce that, and also minor misdemeanors. The township would have to employ a magistrate, so there'd be some costs associated with that. But of course, you'd be collecting fines and fees from that court, so there could be some profit there. Although anybody cited to mayor's court can move that particular case to municipal court, so they can avoid mayor's court, or even worse, if they don't like the decision from mayor's court, they can appeal to municipal court, which can incur some costs. So I think in the past, mayor's courts were viewed as kind of a cash cow for cities, and in some cases they might still be, but the legislature has really started to curb that over recent years. But it is a different authority that's gained. From a responsibility standpoint, there are, as we talked about, different responsibilities. In general, you've got less of a county and state role in township government. And what I mean by that, where you see that most is in the area of roads. We would take on approximately, I think, 35% 35 roads that the county owns and operates that are in Springfield Township. That's 94.64 lane miles, a road that we would be responsible for. We try to get an idea of what kind of annual cost that would be, and just using what we spend on the roads that we maintain, which is about 181 lane miles of road in our system, and doing that same math of the amount that we spend on those roads, you're talking about an additional maintenance cost, and I think this is a pretty conservative number, about $1.2 million per year in annual expense. And then your capital repairs, assuming that you were going to move out 4.7 miles of repaving of that system per year, that would get you roughly on a 20-year cycle. That would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2.6 million per year. Again, this is all using today's cost.
And that's also using the 94.6 miles if we took the whole, all of the.
94.6 is the county portion, assuming we were doing 4.7 per year.
Okay.
That means you were doing every road every 20 years on the county piece. We didn't even factor in the fact that most of the county roads, maybe not all, but specifically Winton Road, has a greater infrastructure than with curbs and gutters, and you can see a higher cost on different portions of it because of the nature of that road. So just from a road standpoint,
Last 20 years, when road doesn't last.
no, the traffic volume, it doesn't. But you're also talking about the storm system that's on there and
Right.
sidewalks, and it's more than just a county road with ditches,
Right.
which a lot of them are. So this kind of tries to factor some of that in. But you're looking at probably somewhere between $3.4 million a year just in added cost on roads. You tend to have the building department responsibility. We've conservatively estimated that's probably in the neighborhood of $250,000 a year. Health department, maybe around $100,000. I don't think water and sewer will be much different because we have we have metropolitan water and sewer districts, so that probably wouldn't be any different there. But we would have increased public works and engineering responsibilities. We need additional equipment. These are all things that the county takes care of. And, these are estimates. It's hard to know exactly what it would be, but, you're probably talking $1 million in additional revenues and expenses there. As I said, some of that could be offset, especially the building department, would be offset by some fees that you'd be collecting for the collected. So the process, if you wanted to incorporate, if you thought this was the way to go, is actually done by petition. And it requires 20% of the electors who voted in the last gubernatorial election to submit the issue to the county commissioners. And then there's a series of requirements as to what that petition must contain. And we'll go through all of this, but the big one is that it meets, the requirements and the criteria set by ORC 70729, which I'll get to here in a second. And it just basically goes through a process which ultimately, if all these requirements are met, the county commissioners will ultimately submit it to the Board of Elections and put on the ballot. The requirements of that petition, in order for it to be accepted, they must meet the fact that the area cannot consist of less than 4 square miles. It has to have a population of 25,000 or greater and a density of at least 1,000 per square mile with an assessed valuation of $2,500 per capita. It cannot completely surround an existing municipal corporation. It must be contiguous, and no portion can contain a military base, camp, or similar institution. In the case of Springfield Township, we would meet all this criteria except for the contiguous one, which we talked about previously. So the township as it is today could not incorporate portions of it, but not the whole thing. And then there's a process which you go through, and after the vote to create the municipal corporation went through, and you have a municipal election, and it just kind of goes through the process that has to occur to get that council seated. So I guess in summary, looking at kind of some of the advantages, it's pretty clear. There's no question municipal corporations have more authority and flexibility than townships, specifically with that charter and home rule authority. They can, supposedly have less control, the General Assembly supposedly has less control over a charter city, although as we've seen recently, that has not been the case with the state General Assembly eliminating the estate tax, the state General Assembly eliminating local government funding, eliminating the tangible personal property tax. I think, it's cost us about $2.5 million. It's cost the city of Cincinnati upwards of $60 million in lost revenue that the city could not do anything about as far as preventing those takes. So is it really a big difference from the control of the General Assembly? That's probably up to question. But clearly with structural and organization, you've got more flexibility. You can get into the ownership and operation of utilities, things along those natures. The taxing authority, as we've talked about, 1% without vote of electric, and a whole variety of things that you can do with the tax code. And I don't think there's any question that if you had the right situation, it can be a preferred structure or a method of local government. There's probably no question about that because of those different things. One of the things that I want to point out that's always kind of a back and forth between cities and townships is the role of the county. And while cities, if you're in a city form of government, you're paying the same county taxes as somebody in the township, but you're receiving almost no directly delivered services. So the city of resident, the city of Wyoming, or the city of Mount Healthy is paying roughly the same property taxes to the county or any other county tax that there is that a township resident is, but they're not getting building department services. They're not getting the use of the county engineer. There's no directly provided services. And that's always been sort of debated whether that's fair or not. And one of the reasons why townships have less authority. Again, the incorporation that we're talking about for Springfield Township, I think there's a couple of unique issues. Specifically, the fact that we're non-contiguous is a major hurdle. We're predominantly residential land uses. We're talking 30% of our uses don't pay any kind of property tax. And we just really don't have a lot of major industry and businesses. So you can come back to, well, I guess the two fundamental questions is the additional authority worth the additional responsibility, which means cost? And given the situation that we face fiscally, would a city structure be significantly more advanced and give us advantages that we don't have? I think the answer to both of those is pretty much a resounding no, because of the cost. When you look at our additional costs, we estimate they would be between $4 and $6 million. I can't know exactly what they would be until those structures were set up, but I think it's going to be in that range. And the additional revenues that we would gain would be in the range of $1 to $2 million. And this is based on our estimates that we did with the JEDs, and these are not shared incomes. That 1% would generate roughly $738,000, all the way up to 2.5%, which would generate $1.8 million. Now again, that's with full reciprocity. So if you reduce the reciprocity credit, or you increased, the tax code to pick up additional things, you're going to see an increase in revenue without question. But you're also going to see a substantially increased tax burden on your residents in order to do that. And again, that's just to make, that's all that allows you to do is take on those roads, and that would be your responsibility and not the county's. And again, we base this on an estimated payroll of $73 million, which was done for the JED study. And that's purely estimated based on the best credible data that we have available. We won't know that. We don't collect an income tax or earnings tax. So we can't know what that number is exactly. So I don't think the township would be better positioned financially to deal with our current challenges, nor would residents pay anything less. It's entirely likely they would pay more than they currently are. And the additional authorities and flexibility while they're there, I don't know what they would do, really how we would use them to deal with the current situation, because cities and villages that have been hit are also in the same financial distress that we are. There's a few that aren't because of some unique circumstances, but they've all been hit just like we have. And haven't really been immune to it for that reason. And then lastly, you have the non-contiguous nature of the township, which presents a variety of different questions, really, and potential challenges as to, the township would need to continue to exist in some fashion, so there would be remnants left over. There would be questions of who owned existing facilities. Would this facility, being a township, go to the city, or would it go to, would it remain with that township? The new city would have to build on the facilities. Those are questions that we don't know. The question of what would happen to existing township levies. Would they remain? Would they cease? I don't have the answer to how that would work.
I mean, simply put, you're basically adding expense, and then the money that we pay to the county to do like Winton Road and Hamel Ave and some of the roads that are county roads, they become our responsibility.
Yes.
And the benefit is we can tax up to 1%, which wouldn't even solve our current problem, let alone all the added expense we would have. So it's pretty much not.
Well, you can tax more than 1%. You can just do 1% without a vote, but you can tax
Right, I
additional.
understand that, like you said,
You have the authority.
even if we went to 2.5, we wouldn't bring enough money to cover what the additional costs are, let alone the shortfalls that we're facing today.
I mean, I don't want this to be an indictment of the city structure, because I think the city structure has many, many advantages and it is very appropriate for the right situation. And if you were starting from scratch, maybe it's the way you would go, but it's not the way you would go when you're looking at a community that's already built out. It has sort of the land use patterns that we do and the infrastructure needs that we do. It doesn't provide the relief to deal with those any better than we're doing now. I think the same issues would exist. I mean, in fact, the state, they backed off a little bit, but the legislature has made it very clear that they are now starting to regulate what cities can do on that income tax. They're talking about making it uniform. I think they've taken some steps to get that passed, but there's also talk of the state collecting that income tax for every city in the state of Ohio, taking a piece off the top and then giving a smaller share back to the cities.
So that's taken away some of the autonomy of the cities. And
There has been, without question, in the last 10 years, an erosion of home rule authority. Even though the statute still has it, you've seen little by little actions by the state legislature to take away home rule authority and more control of the state.
Well, Mike, thank you for putting together that presentation. I think it's clear. These are some of the discussions that we had, back a year ago, 2 years ago, when we were talking about the long-term finances and the financial health of our township, and what options did incorporation present. And the reality is, for the added responsibilities and everything that we would get, we would have the ability, more flexibility to tax our residents more. That's not the answer.
that's not the solution. No.
So we're trying to tax them as little as possible. Well, thank you for that.
It kind of goes back to the research that was done regarding the efficiency and effectiveness of township government. And the research clearly indicated that the township form of government is the best form of government.
Most efficient.
And the most efficient, right. So when you pull all that data together, I kept thinking about the research that was just recently done, I guess a couple of years ago, and it clearly indicates that the township is the best and the most efficient form of government.
That was the Cox report.
Cox report, that's right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mike?
Joe, I just maybe asked Chief Michael to bring this up today. Over the last couple of meetings, we talked about chasers as our ongoing problem. And I think there's a fatal auto accident I guess it was early Sunday morning, directly related to that. I'm not sure if the board was aware of that or not. Chief, maybe just give us a quick update on it.
We still have the same issues that we made the last 2 weekends. We made about 2 dozen arrests in and around the location. We cited the bar for allowing openly We had trouble running up there Saturday night with a number of fights. The fights moved down to another location in Seven Hills. And upon arrival, the officers, several cars took off at a high speed southbound. One of those cars ended up losing control left center, was involved in a fatal accident at Hamilton, Birmingham. We traced that driver back to the original incident at Chaser's Bar on Hamilton.
The driver was killed or they killed somebody
The
else?
driver was killed.
And I continue to say, how much more are we to tolerate? How much more, I mean, that person could have gone to an innocent victim, somebody going to church or coming home or going over, getting off work, and I'm just, how much more are we gonna jeopardize our township and our residents?
There was innocent people injured, weren't there?
Please?
There was innocent people injured?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does it take for a police officer to be shot? Is that,
We've got a police officer shot.
I know we've had him shot at, yes.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. We're gonna continue enforcement, we're gonna continue to cite for violations.
The liquor board's gonna continue to fine them.
If that's not our control.
I have a question. What if our residents put together a letter campaign to the state, to the liquor board, concerns about what they're seeing and the jeopardy that's the township is being put into because of that establishment? Would that have any impact?
I don't know. What the commission takes the hearings, we testify, they send us what they decide 3-4 weeks later. We've talked to several other townships that have had similar trouble spots. Where it took 5 to 6 years to get the liquor license revoked. And it took one particular neighborhood community, it took them 11 years under a nuisance permit to actually get the liquor license. It took 6 years to get the license, and 11 years to get the building actually torn down on a nuisance permit. Really, at that point, after 11 years, the owner of the property gave up. Otherwise, it was still been battling over the workers' teams.
So,
The way all the legislation is currently written and everything we have to follow, there is no instant solution.
Have we found more liquor violations?
I decided for allowing drug use, open drug use, decided for allowing smoking in a bar. The problem we have is actually getting additional liquor violations is that the crowd's so big that, for us to try to get inside and get to the bar area to get out the liquor violations is almost impossible because when we do get there, there's so many fights going on.
sounds like a war zone.
It's pretty crazy on the weekends. I mean, and the problem is that we're paying, overtime every weekend to staff extra in order to handle it. Because it takes all our officers on duty plus. We usually have 4 or 5 of them in every agency sending officers in order to try to get those situations under control.
So have we actually arrested individuals who were impaired and under the influence? So I'm just thinking about my favorite organization, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers.
Laura, what about starting a nuisance action against them?
I think, as you all know, they're rather difficult to do. It requires an awful lot of evidence, and Dave said it takes a lot of years to get it, because it has to be the statute is so narrow as to what qualifies as a nuisance. And frankly, it's mainly geared a lot toward prostitution and a lot towards prostitution. So it's a little different.
Already somewhere in this.
Yeah.
And, there are rules like us, and it took them 11 years to get a place.
are looking at, I'm not saying we're not, but you don't want to file it before you've had enough to win.
No, I understand that.
And unfortunately, you have to have a considerable number of incidences. You know, the liquor violations aren't going to qualify because those are handled by the liquor commission, whether they're smoking or not.
Right.
Or to be a violation.
That's not going to do it. Right.
So,
There was a fight there last Saturday night where a guy got thrown through the front window. And we actually had to take him by cruiser down the street for the EMS people to go take care of him because there was some big fights in and out, in the water, in the parking lot there. It wasn't even safe to bring people in to treat the guy that got thrown through the plate glass window.
So my message at our last meeting evidently is not working right. Ask anyone that was watching our program, if you have any loved ones that want to hang out somewhere, get them away from there. Tell them to go somewhere else and not there, because it's still happening.
I know.
It's located on Hamilton Avenue, just north of Kemper.
Just as you're.
Called Chasers.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I think maybe we need to be making it clear to the Liquor Commission the problem this is. I don't know. I think also the Attorney General's office, you know, who presents the cases to the Liquor Commission, and maybe this ought to be a thing. It's right there. You know, this impacts us. It certainly impacts Coleraine.
Yes,
It probably impacts Forest Park to some extent, doesn't it?
Fairfield.
Fairfield, it's kind of all that, but us and Coleraine the most.
Coleraine gets a lot of it.
And so maybe we need to talk to our fellow trustees in Coleraine and see if we can start a campaign to make our displeasure known with. I mean, when I got the notice on the last one, it said they were fined, and I didn't know if it looked like it was an exclamation point and then a 500. Were they fined $1,500 or $500? $1,500.
So it's our intention, we met with the Attorney General, it's our intention to keep the documentation and object to the renewal of permit in June. This is a DOT renewal every year. So,
Well, that might be our next shot, because these liquor violations you file, they're going to take forever to get all the way through the system again. So maybe what we need to do is to talk to the Attorney General's office. We need to get Coleraine.
I'm
That's
not
fair.
there.
We have talked to the prosecuting attorney's office.
Yeah.
And normally, since basically just a witness, you're not the controlling party in those cases, it's the Attorney General that prosecutes them. Normally, you don't make any contact. I have talked to the Attorney General's handling cases, Rob Broward.
Right, I know you have.
Talking to them. And we have stated on numerous occasions that the problems with this and our desire to have their liquor permit revoked. I've also talked to the attorney for that entity personally. I know him, and we've talked and tried to work it out rationally that way. We have talked about having we've talked about internally with staff, writing a letter to, basically as you said, writing it to the board for the Liquor Commission to say, you know, they can't influence any particular case, because that's obviously done by the hearing board of that case, and it's based on the evidence we present. It is a quasi-criminal charge, perhaps a better way to put it, but there's due process, so they're only dealing with the allegations in that case. But the concern we have is that the penalties are so minor, and that's a general statement that the board must be, you know, being okay with. So I think that's where we need to talk to the Attorney General, the Liquor Commission, just to say, look, when you give these small fines for these, what we consider major infractions, that has a real impact. And I think that's the kind of letter we were talking about writing. So.
Could we also in that letter, I would like to be able to cite this has cost our township X number of hours in overtime and the cost there? Is that something that we can, would that be extremely hard to quantify, Chief, or you go back through records and dig it out? I think that's something we need to know. I think we need to bring attention to this homicide, et cetera.
And what about including other, like Fairfield and the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department? I mean, I know that the Sheriff's Department has participated, been a part of that as well, so that it's multi-jurisdictional.
Right.
Would that have any impact?
I don't know, I mean, liquor control, the liquor board decides, I'll take what they take, there's no guideline as to what they want, how they would want to case. Obviously, the more pressure that's put on, the liquor control board, or the attorney general, make the argument for revocation on the liquor. The only we're forced to do is to continue to take enforcement action, balance the violation, balance the numbers, and go with the attorney general and present those to the liquor control board, and obviously our request would be for revocation of the permit.
Now, there's paperwork that has to be set off to do that. There's paperwork that has to be set. I think that comes to the township.
Right.
And they ask.
Yeah, or similar to the permits like we did tonight, we get the transfer.
Right.
Basically, every June, we renew every existing permit.
Right. So when we get that, we need to object to it.
Right.
All right, well, Chief, thank you for the update. We appreciate it. Is there anything else, Mr. Hennekamp?
That's all I have.
Okay. Next this evening, under board resolutions, the first resolution we have is resolution number 16, 2014, declaring nuisances pursuant to Ohio Revised Code section 505.87 and various listed properties within Springfield Township and authorizing statutory actions necessary to abate the nuisances. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Brennan? Aye. Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Honowell?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have resolution number 17, 2014, establishing assessment for abatement of nuisance and certifying same to Hamilton County Auditor.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Brennan? Aye. Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Honowell?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have resolution number 18, 2014, adopting permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2014. Do we have-
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Brennan? Aye. Mr. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Honowell?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Next, under old business, do we have any old business before the board?
Well, I have old business. It's about a week or two old, I guess, so it's old. My first report, each year there's an annual report that's provided to all of the townships, municipalities, and et cetera in Hamilton County by the Hamilton County engineers. And for quite a few years, we have been, as far as the county engineers analysis, one of our key neighborhoods or intersections we've been first as far as having the major crashes, and sometimes there were fatalities, and that was at Winton and Galbraith Road. And, we've been concerned about that, and we work diligently, as we usually do when we work with other corporations, to come up with a plan and some sort of an analysis to determine what's going on and what can we do to minimize that and decrease that. So in our meeting this past couple weeks ago, the 2013 crash report now shows us in third place. And that's a big, big drop. And I attribute it to the work that we've done as far as working with the Hamilton County Commissioners, the work that was done to open that intersection area there and make it safer. They put in double turn lanes, left turn lanes, And I know that there were a lot of concerns, it was taking them so long to get that area, you know, safer, but it takes time when you're gonna create changes and do due diligence. And so I think those were the primary reasons. There was a traffic survey that was done over that period of time, and I really think that has a lot to do with the decrease in that, in our ranking from first to third. John, did I miss anything? Is there anything else you could say that maybe had an impact on that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, the additional left turn lanes and the dedicated rights. I'm sure Colonel Hunt could probably address the traffic flow a lot better on those intersections, clear out a lot faster than they used to.
Right.
So we had, in 2013, crashes there were 351, and that doesn't seem like a lot maybe to some people, but if you're in traffic trying to get home, or if you have somebody jumps that intersection, then our fire department and our police department have to respond and try and take care of those individuals and get the car towed out of the way. So I don't see as much of a mess as we've had in the past. So, you know, I think that was great that we had that report. Now, there are some communities in our township where they've had, you know, other crashes, but they were nothing compared to what we had at the Winton Woods and Galbraith intersection. So that was good. So the second thing I just wanted to share, this is the year of annual meetings. And we have a Hamilton County Public Health District, and that district does a great job in the county. And one of the things that their major mission statement is the Hamilton County Public Health educates, serves, and protects our community for a healthier future. So one of the concerns that they raised when we had our yearly annual meeting was, and I don't know if you all have seen it, but throughout the county, there's been an increase in individuals hoarding. And you know, when you go on TV and you see all these individuals that are hoarding, well, the hoarding is not just looking at hoarding of your furniture and junk and stuff. Well, they're not, they may be my junk, but somebody else's treasure. But also the hoarding of animals, multiple animals which individuals cannot really take care of and maintain. So the health district became very active in looking at what they could do to decrease the incidence of hoarding that is increasing in our township. So what they did was put together a program where they went in and educated the individuals how first to organize the hoarding. And so they didn't go in and say, we're cleaning all this out and we're throwing all this stuff out. They went in and showed them and taught them how to get to the bathtub because the bathtub was full, how to get to the sink and maybe move things over to other corners and etc. And then if any of those individuals had any mental health issues, they then worked with the health department and the mental health system to help those individuals, you know, minimize the use of hoarding. So, I don't know, when you go home, look around at your house, I think I'm hoarding, but I'm not as bad as some of the pictures that I've seen. But they've done a great job and also minimizing the number of animals a person may have. It was not unusual for them to find a home with 20 and 30 cats or dogs and etc. that were not being fed and nurtured and taken care of. So because of the great job that they did, they won a state award from the Ohio Environmental Health Association of Sanitation. And the other thing that the health district, they just got real cool because they were recognized in 2013 with a Samuel Crumbin grant and protection award. And that had to do with the services that they're providing and the improvements that they're having as they investigate restaurants. And I know that we all wonder, at least I do, I don't know about you all, who's preparing the food? Are they preparing the food with gloves on, hairnets on? Do they spit in the food if the customer was really raunchy with them, you know? You look and you worry about all that stuff. So,
I never used to.
I don't really think about it, thank you very much.
but there have been incidents, not that I'm aware of in our township, but they look at all of that and their investigations have clearly improved the level of services in the restaurants throughout the county and made a major improvement. So because of their work, they were awarded this international award. So the Hamilton County Health District is doing a great job in our community, just want to make you aware of that. And the third thing that the health district is really trying to educate the community about, I know people probably don't like to talk about this, but let's take the sunglasses off and the blinders off. There's an increase in STD diseases, HIV, and other STD infections. And so they're trying, when they took over this grant from the state, they took that grant over in 2012. Well, there was already an epidemic. So it's getting worse. And people, and I attribute it as well to the increase in heroin and people using needles and sharing needles, as well as other things. So it's a major, major job that they are undergoing at this point to try to not be, right now, the 5th largest incidence of STD infections and HIV in the United States. We are, and we should not be that high. We're higher than even the state of Ohio, of course. So just something just to think about. Look at the great work your health district is doing, and I will keep giving you an update on how they're going. You know, I thought once when our police chief says, well, we found some people, in the back seat and we had to take them to the hospital. And I said, well, how'd you find them? So Dave said, well, they had a needle in their arm. And I'm like, I don't believe you. This is not happening in Springfield Township. Yes, folks, it is happening in Springfield Township. So we need to continue to do a better job of educating our community. So I'm off of the box now. That's my report as far as old business.
Well, thank you, Gwen.
The other old business is the state of the township. I know we had to cancel that a couple of weeks ago. Fortunately, we did because the weather that day was god-awful. So nobody probably could have made it. Most of the things were canceled that day. As the new guy who just started the first of the year, I was involved from the time I was elected in your meetings, obviously, last August until January when I started. And I don't know how many years you've been doing that, but we've had, I think, 5 JEDS meetings. And I mean, I think everybody understands the state of the township today. And I think that if we are going to have a state of the township, we might want to wait until after the May election because that's going to affect the state of the township going forward, whether the JEDS passes or does not pass.
That makes good sense.
So that's one man's opinion.
I tend to agree with you, Mark. We've had the 5 meetings. We've had all kinds of discussion and testimony. I know we talked, I think we looked to see, well, Tom isn't here, but I think we looked to see if there were other dates available, and they're not between now and then, to have it back at the Grove, and that's kind of the place we've always had them. It sort of makes sense. And I think you're right. Probably, if there will be a definite need to have a State of the Township address, if depending upon what happens with the outcome of the election in May. So I think it probably makes sense to.
We'll just have a rehashing the same things again.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I agree.
One other thing that I had under old business, and I meant to bring this up last month, but neglected to, was every month we receive cards from people thanking Chief Leininger's paramedics and other emergency personnel for the type of services that they perform to people in our township that are having medical emergencies. But it's usually along the lines of somebody saying, you saved my spouse, or whatever. But we got one here that said, Springfield Township EMS saved this man's life. If he had not received timely defibrillation, he would have died. John Morris, Suzanne Castillo, Nick Platt did a great job. These types of services and saves are often overlooked. And they took the patient, who was a 55-year-old man who, I guess, suffered a heart attack while he was home watching football, to Christ Hospital, and it was a great job.
Thank you. I'll share your thoughts with the staff. And it is rare that we have an opportunity to save someone when they go into cardiac arrest,
Right.
but through drug protocols and the equipment that you allow us to buy, the new technology of our LifePak 15 to give us the ability for capnography and the state-of-the-art defibrillation that we can use in the field. It makes a difference. It's very costly equipment, but a letter like that makes it worthwhile because we do save people's lives with that equipment.
Well, that's right, Chief. You know, we talk about budgets and staffing and everything else, but when you do have something like this, you bring something why we do it.
Bill, just, it brings up one thought. Last week, I went to retrieve a voicemail, and my mailbox was full. That's the first time since we've had that system that's occurred. I had 35 voicemails from residents thanking our service department for the job that they've done over the winter. So it was amazing. So John, I don't know if you were out robocalling people or what was going on. They were from all over the township. It was, you know, and we get, you know, generally in a big storm, we get 10 or 12. Maybe it was just folks hoping that was the last one and they had waited to the end, but they were really, I mean, people were very appreciative of the service.
Yes.
I also think one of the factors is as they left Springfield Township and a lot of our neighbors have run out of salt and so forth, they found the roads a lot tougher once they got out of the township. So I think that have made more people call.
Could have had a factor, but I mean, we get generally 10 or 12 each time with that value, so. And I'm always amazed that people take the time to, you know, they were long, very thankful messages, so.
That's good.
And the critical thinking where you were throwing out salt and stuff before the snow came, because we knew there was going to be ice, and just the ability to do that and follow through and made it a lot safer for everyone.
Right. And you know, this winter would have been much different in this township. I can remember when I came on the board, we had about a 750 ton kind of homemade storage shed down there behind what's now Chipotle's, and we would have been in a world of hurt this year because we would have ran out of salt way early, and there was none to be had, or very, very hard to get. So the building that salt dome, we did a master plan years ago. We looked at what our long-range needs of our township, and you know, the other thing is we got all our trucks and everything inside in that metal building we built, so they're not all deteriorating like they did in, you know, they would in years past. And those things pay off in the long run. You know, we had to bite the bullet to do it, but it's paying off for our community. Any new business this evening? Anybody?
The only new business is on April 16th, 7 o'clock at the Senior Center. They're having the homestead exemption announcement, which basically, that's, if you don't make sure that you're on that, it's going away, so you need to be grandfathered in. So we just wanted to let the residents of the township know so everybody gets their paperwork in before it disappears.
I think that's right, Mark. I think under the new law, there's income requirements that, whereas if you're on it now, you can stay on it, but to get on it after a certain deadline, if you're over certain income requirements, you're kicked off.
And that's for
Right.
seniors 65 and over,
Yeah.
and anyone with disabilities,
Right.
and yes, and an income.
And I think the auditor, Trustee Rhodes, can be there.
We just want to bring attention to the township so the residents are aware.
And if it's not applicable to any of you, to anyone in the audience or anyone at this table, I'm sure you have neighbors who would be applicable to, because we have a lot of individuals in our community that are still here and they're 65 plus or have some disabilities.
Thank you, Gwen. All right, any other new business? We're at that point in the meeting then for citizens' participation. I don't know if there's anyone here who'd like to address the board. If you would, we would ask that you come up to the podium, state your name and address. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Diana, and I'm actually the owner of Chasers. And I'd like to address some of the misconceptions that you
What's your last name? ma'am?
Wellman. Wellman.
Oh,
Do you have an address in the township? What's the address?
11952 Hamilton Avenue.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, I need to write all this down, sorry.
I think that you're maybe under the impression that we don't care about safety. And at Chasers, we do care about safety. And like the chief said, yes, the window got broken. No one was thrown through the window, thank God. But the reason the window got broke was because we were throwing somebody else who just was not maintaining themselves properly. We don't allow smoking in there of any kind. We are a smoke-free facility. I make sure that, we're not overthrowing people. I make sure that everyone's behaving. And it hasn't always been like that. But as of the past 6 months, I've been trying to really get it into shape. So yes, when you're in the bar industry, you're going to have some incidents. That's a for sure thing. Or Michael's has incidents. I've seen his windows get blown out by people throwing things through them. I'm doing everything possible to ensure the safety of all the patrons. And I think that, you hear a lot of the bad stuff, but you're not hearing the good stuff too. That a lot of people come there because they feel safer than going into some of these other neighborhoods and these other communities. And they like that, and that's what they like about Chasers, is they can feel safe there. And unfortunately, there may be 1 or 2 incidences that happen, and if I could control those, I would. But I just wanted to make you aware that we are doing what we can. And the police were in there, we invited them in. They can verify that this past weekend, there was nothing inside the building that I was breaking the law or that everything was right. So I just wanted to make.
We were told that a few weeks ago there were 50 people fighting inside your place, and our police had lobbed tear gas in it to break it up.
That's untrue. What had happened is right at the door, it was at the end of the night, we were getting people out. And the club was actually cleared, except for right at that door. Now, you couldn't tell that because, being right at the door. And we were getting them out the door, and there was a fight right there at the door. Well, the police were very impatient about us getting them out, so they came and pepperballed pretty much an empty club. But that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get them out of there. I have outside detail that will leave them when they get out. I hired 6 off-duty people to handle that. And I would have Springfield Township. We did have Springfield Township. But I was told we had to have 6 people or no. Now, I couldn't do that. I could not, if I didn't have 6 volunteers, then I wouldn't get any detail. I can't leave a place unsafe. So I had to go to a private security in order to do that, to make sure that these people were safe and there was some kind of, buffer there to make sure that everything was okay on the outside, on the end.
Week in and week out, we have problems at Chasers, and we don't have them all over the township. You're saying it's safer than other places. That's true.
That's like those nightclubs. We're the only nightclub in Springfield Township. We're not a bar. We are a nightclub. There's a big difference. So if you go to the city of Cincinnati, you're going to find other nightclubs. We are more maintained than any of the actual nightclubs that you will go to.
It's hard to believe that that's the safest nightclub around. I don't know for a fact. It just seems hard to believe.
Right, I know. I don't know how many you've been to.
I used to go a long time ago, but
But things have changed since a long time ago.
I don't really go to nightclubs anymore.
Right. But, I just wanted to address that. And any of you are more than welcome to come out and take a look for yourselves and see. At any time, we're only open on Fridays and Saturdays.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to address the board?
How y'all doing? My name is Genzo James. I'm actually the main promoter for Chasers. I'm actually the guy that promotes the parties that's responsible for bringing the people there.
How do you spell your name, sir?
D'Angelo, D-A-N-G-L-O.
Last name James?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your address, sir?
10237 Crestland Court, C-R-E-S-T-L-A-N-D.
Okay. And you're the promoter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what would you like to say?
I just want to address the court, maybe try to clear some of this stuff up because, like she was saying, we doing really better than any nightclub that's around. Period. She's doing a real good job. Our detailing doing a real good job. As everybody's aware of, we didn't have an incident up at that club for maybe 6 months. We didn't have a police presence at all. I seen the meeting that they had last week down at this council, and they were saying that I guess because we were under trouble, they felt that we were doing something different. But I'm telling y'all that nothing has changed. We haven't changed up anything from the 6 months to now. We just had an incident. And the incident seemed a little more. I've heard the stories. If I heard only their stories, I would think the same thing. Like, whoa! I heard a person stream from a chandelier. It's a drop ceiling. The club has a drop ceiling. Everybody knows what a drop ceiling is. It's phone. It's impossible to swing from a chandelier. But if I heard the stories, if I heard about the 40 people fighting and the police having to go to materials, I would be under the impression that, hey, this is out of control because what I'm hearing. But if you actually will come and you will see the scenario that night, a girl had got into a fight. We had exited her out, and we called the police because she said she had a gun in her car. She said she was going to a car to get a gun, so we called the police. While the police was up there, we called them because we can't give a gun. Our detail is not licensed to take the gun from a person or to give the gun back to a person when you're under the use of alcohol. Your carry concealed weapon permit is not valid when you have some alcohol. So we called the police to try to get the gun taken from this lady. When the police get up there, they take the gun from this lady, and at the same time they seek the fight. When they seek the fight, they respond to the fight. I guess they felt that as if our security, our inside security, and our outside detail would not have handled that appropriately. I don't know. But for the past 6 months, we've been handling it without Springfield Township. We used to have Springfield Township as our detail, and as she told you, that the problem was that they told us that we need to have 6 or none, and it was days where they could not get 6 volunteers. So if they had 5 volunteers, they would not send none of them. It was like we could not, we had to have police presence in order for us to invite people out there for them to feel safe. We're not going to invite people out there if we don't have a police presence. So we're not going to operate this club. We don't feel like we can do it safely. We're trying to do it as safely as possible. We sat down there with the help of them, and we got Friday under control. We used to only have 1 day a week. We used to have just Friday, and they was our detail. They were helping us with the Friday, and we got Friday under control and helping them. The main problem that we had were people was trying to smoke weed, so we built the smoking section outside to try to make sure we don't see no smoke at all. We had a follower machine so you could see the lights in the club, and that was helping people disguise the weed smoke. So we stopped that. We don't have no weed smoke. Like I said, the officer came. I asked the officers to come in last week to get a drug, to get a smell test or something, because the rumors be going on so crazy. And I'm thinking like, well, can somebody actually come in here and where is it? Nobody's not coming in and smell anything, or people I'm seeing here are not coming in there, or I've never seen their face in there once. The people that are coming in there, they're giving me a thumbs up. Every night I'm asking the detail officers, like I'm the main promoter, so I pay the detail officers from the door. Every night I'm asking them, is there a problem? Is there anything we could have done better? Or do you see any problems or anything we could do? Every night they're giving me a thumbs up. The sergeant and officers on detail are giving me thumbs up every night. And I'm saying, okay, cool. So then we have a meeting with them one day, and they tell us about how we've just been outrageous. And we said, oh wait, there must be a communication problem. We even asked for Sergeant Hughes and another officer to come to our meeting we had with them, because we were thinking maybe there's a communication gap between the officers, the sergeant, and then when it gets to the top, and then you guys. We were thinking maybe there's a communication gap. We don't know. But all we know is the officers telling us we were doing everything good, we were cool. We were like, yeah, what's the fight? What can we do about this fight that just happened? They'd be like, listen, this is liquor, it's a bar, you will have fights. It's just how you maintain yourself and how you handle the fights is what depends. And we were like, okay. And we will move on thinking that was okay. And then we would look up, and then here we go out here to the meeting with y'all last Tuesday, y'all was talking about, they wanted to take the license for the spot. And I was just thinking, I didn't understand it. And we're doing the best we can. We're asking any advice we can get. She emailed them 2-3 months ago for a meeting. We just got a response back last week saying that they'll give us a meeting. We're doing everything we can. Yes, sir.
No, sure.
Well, that is true. I emailed
You
him.
emailed me Monday, and I told
I
you,
didn't.
you want to see copies of it?
I went
I
through-
told you I'd give you Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and you've never responded.
That's when I got the response from you. I
Exactly.
emailed you 2-3 months
No,
ago
you didn't. You
I
just
did.
emailed it to me.
through Springfield Township.org. That's how I got your email address.
This is why we have communication problems.
Well, Mr. James,
Yes, sir.
my question, because we will not deliberate this here, because there are facts that indicate that it's not exactly your average, quote, nightclub.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question to you is, what are you doing as the promoter to maintain some crowd control so that you don't get too many people in that building at the same time?
Okay, our code is set up to almost about 450, so we stop it every night at 4:20, just to make sure that we have, just where we are cool. When we have the problems on Friday, we only had 6 inside securities, and we only was having 2 or 4 detail from Springfield. Now we have 6 detail outside every time, and we have 12 people inside. That's how come we're able to maintain, that's how come we've been doing so well for 6 months. Because we rebooted up our security. We took our security to the next level. We really did. And we would send the email. I was hoping that we could get one car from Springfield, at least give us some support up there. Because what happened is we have paid security. So the young guys will think paid security is not serious as real police. They have to see somebody go to jail in order to really start to take the people serious. And we needed the help with the police because there's 2 different nights. Friday and Saturday are 2 different homes are promoted by 2 different teams. People that come on Friday are not the same people that comes on Saturday. We have Friday under control. Saturday where we need a little help. And that's where the incident happened on Saturday. And they don't know Springfield Township on Saturday. They met them on Friday. We used to only be open on Friday. We just started open on Saturday. That's where the new problems that you're talking about, we had it under control, is because we opened up a new night. That's the only thing. The new problem happened on a new night. Our Friday, we still have it under control.
I personally will say that show me some times and some weekends where you have no problem.
Now, can I say something to that now? What they're doing is they're setting up 12 cars. They're setting up 12 cars on the street with scanners. What they're doing is they're pulling over every car that comes in our lot. And they're backing up with this car 3-4 cars deep. They're pulling over every single car, not every single car, anything, single flash, light, notes. They pulled her over twice that night. They pulled him over earlier, pulled her over later. Twice that night for a license plate, not for a license plate. They're writing this down. They're coming and telling y'all we have 20 arrests. They're saying, we have 20 citations, we have 20 things. Yes, y'all sit across the league with a scanner and y'all pull over every car that comes here. My cousin, if y'all want it, like you said about the petition thing, from the citizens, I'll get a petition for the people in the club to show you the harassment they feel that they're getting from Springfield Township right now. These people that go to other nightclubs. This is not the only nightclub in Cincinnati. This is the safest though that they feel like, except out there getting harassed by the police. I went and told the sergeant, I like the sweating of the people because it keeps them in check. It's a deterrence for problems. Every bar owner, everybody that owns a liquor license knows that if you have too many problems, the state will come after your liquor license. Nobody wants a problem that has a liquor license. Nobody.
Well, nobody wants the problems that we've seen thus far.
There's no middle at all.
So
At all.
therefore, if you really, and I'm not going to get into a debate with you, I'm just going to share from my own personal feelings and experience. If you really care about the community as you say you do, then you will do everything within your power to minimize even any police officers having to come up there, because there are nightclubs in the city and in the county that don't have those problems. And in some of those nightclubs, they have charitable events too during the evenings, and people will come to them and they don't have problems. So if you really are serious about it, then you have to make some changes so that you can control the crowd and that there aren't any incidents. That would be from my perspective.
There is no other perspective. I mean, at the end of the day, there is no perspective. At the end of the day, if you want to keep it, you have to show the community that you're trying to do it right, and we are, man. We had one incident. The one incident that's really blowing all this up was that the shooting happened one day. And this is where it was blowing. This is what the sergeants, my brother started talking. I haven't talked to the chief yet, but when I started talking to the sergeants, this is what the sergeants told me. That we're up here like this, and we're on their back. We're doing this. We're creating these 20 arrests every night. I'm pulling up all these cars, and we're doing this because we're trying to build a case. The case they're trying to build is this nuisance. They're trying to say there's a problem up here. But we only had one incident that one night, and in that one incident there was a shooting. There was a shooting on Hamilton Avenue within 3 bars, within 30 minutes that night. That night, we did not have an altercation for there to be a shooting from a patron that came up out of our bar. We don't even believe the shooting was a patron that came up out of our bar. Our patrons know that we're walking on thin lines so much that everybody is aware that if we don't do what we're supposed to, Springfield Township is on our back. They're going to try to take our license. They're going to try to shut us down. Whoever that was that did the shooting, I'm thinking it's somebody spiteful. I don't know, but it was not somebody who got kicked out of our bar that night.
Well, I think you just told me, Mr. James, that one of your patrons here, last week, had a gun in their car, and we had to come and take the gun away from them?
They had a carry concealed license for the gun, but since they were under the influence of alcohol, we felt that it was illegal for them to have their gun. And we sent our detail to prosecute that. We're not with that. We prosecuted on that. Our detail went to court with them to prosecute on that.
Well, I can say, I don't know if we had other bars in Springfield Township where our police have been shot at.
No. And there's been more than one shooting incident related to Chasers.
Yes, sir. I wish y'all guys would shoot this. That is intolerable. I'm sorry.
And the reason what was the reason why they called the police with the girl with the gun? It wasn't because she had a gun, it was because she tried to come back in and shoot the security people.
Yes, sir.
So don't make it sound like, oh, well, we found this gun and we cooperated and turned it over to the police. The only reason we got called is because your security people were threatened, and we had to come up and take care of that.
Yes, sir.
And when we went in, that night when we went in that bar, like, supposedly we were going to fight at the door, how many police officers showed up?
You mean from Springfield Township?
From everywhere.
What,
There were probably 30 different police cars there, wasn't there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you really think that we would do that for one little fight?
When it happened, I was there when it happened. I was right there on the side of the door when the sergeant came in and shot the pepper ball, shot him in the cylinder. He came in, and when he did it, I was telling him, I said, no, hold on, we got it. But he said, stop, and shot it. And I was like, okay, it's cool. Everybody just evacuate, it's cool. But I talked to him afterwards, and I was like, he was like, yeah, I just had to get it under control. And I'm like, you think you had to have all these cars? He was like, yeah, it helps us evacuate the parking lot better. And I
There was five more fights in the parking lot.
Cause I want to say that at the end of the day, I'm sorry if I came down here to slander you, Chief. I mean, y'all helped us out. Y'all gave us a chance when y'all probably didn't have to, and I understand that. And y'all is not with us no more. They don't want to help us out, try to help us run this. I understand that too, because y'all gave us opportunity and another gun was shot. So all I can do is come down here and speak with y'all.
But we met with her, we met with Diane and every promoter that she hired.
Yes, sir.
They've been open.
And I thought I would do a better job.
And we met with you.
Yes, sir.
And we explained all the problems. So, I mean, you act like, we don't respond to your requests, we don't meet with you, we don't tell you what's going on. We've done every time, we've met with every promoter that's been hired up here to run the place.
You gave me a shot, so I can't say you gave me a shot, and I can't say that at the end of the day that gunshot, I'm sorry, I apologize, y'all. I apologize. The only thing I can say on the 5th, that was a new night, and we need y'all help with Saturday. We got Friday under control, we need a little help with Saturday. That's the only thing I can ask from Eugene.
And we're there on Saturday, that's the problem.
We'll pay for it too, to try to take some of the overtime off you guys' head, because we understand the strain and based on the force. We don't want to be a thorn in everybody's side. We're trying to figure out how to keep this business with somehow some cooperation.
And we explained to you, it's the social media and the crowd that gets drawn on by the productions that get put on by
A lot of promotion, the type of promotion I'm doing.
And when our officers are there and we got license plates readers, all we're doing is picking up and stopping people that are wanted.
I told the sergeant, I encourage the reader to be up there because it's deterrent. Because I said,
Well, and then you complain that we're stopping every third or fourth car. That's because we wanted. Well, we end up making 15, 20 arrests up there because the crowd that you're attracting are criminals without any warrants, felony histories, guns, drugs, heroin, cocaine, crack. You've seen us arrest that. You've seen us do it. You've seen us take back cars in the parking lot. You've seen us take off a guy. You've seen us chase people up over the roof, on top of the roof of that building.
I'll help y'all.
So we've got probably 50 bars, and you guys need more service. in a weekend than all our parties in a year.
For the last 6 months, though, we was doing good, though.
I think you maybe need to think about changing the kind of promotions. You can run a successful club without appealing to, it sounds like, the kind of patrons you're getting. We have a large township, you can see from the map over there. We can't have our entire police force, centered on your one establishment every weekend.
That's right.
And so I think the outcome here is going to be up to you people. You're going to either have to make some changes and get this thing under control, or you are not. And in which event, we're going to be your adversaries. We're going to be trying to shut you down.
Yes, sir.
Put you out of business.
I'm with it. I understand it. I really do. Everybody can't do a job. I really do understand it. If I can't do my job competent, then the person above me does his job. And the person above me is you all. The job above me is y'all shut it down. I understand that. I'm just like, again, once again, I'm back here asking. I hope she was going to ask it, but we need the help from the police once more again. But without the help on Saturday, it will not work. It will not work.
We're not going to run your nightclub.
Right.
We can't run your nightclub for you.
Yes, sir.
We've met, we've told you what our suggestions were, and, continue to have problems.
Yes, sir.
We met with her since that club went with 3 or 4 different names, 3 or 4 different promoters. We met with every one of them. And as soon as there's a whole lot of liquor violations and then it permits up for a hearing, everything's quiet for a couple of months. As soon as the hearing's over, the roof comes off the place again, and then we're up there. It's not even warm weather yet.
We ain't changed nothing, though, Chief. What happened?
Well, I can't explain how you draw your crowds. We don't go, we're not inside the bar.
Yes, sir.
I mean, she sits there and claims that there's no smoking. You just got done saying you turned off the fog machine so you could see everybody smoking weed.
What we talking about, Black?
So, I mean, let's not kid each other.
Yes,
We
we
know what's going on.
Not no more.
I think you're under the wrong impression of what he said. If someone's lighting up in there, there's no fog machine, so we can find that person to throw them out. It's not that we're permitting it to happen. There is no, it's a zero tolerance.
We run a 0 tolerance, Chief.
You're right, but you open an outdoor smoking room.
You
Yeah,
have
for
to-
tobacco.
Yeah, tobacco only.
For tobacco only.
Right.
That's,
Okay, your officers are more than welcome, and along with liquor control, to come in at any time, or any of the
We
board
know
to
that,
come in.
and we did that. In
And
fact, when a kid tried to come in the night of the fight and pepper ball, you slammed the door shut on the office.
I did not.
Really?
I've got video. I have video cameras within there, and I can prove that that did not
Good.
happen.
Bring in the liquor control. 'Cause
Oh, I will.
We've got plenty of video ourselves.
Okay.
I think we understand the situation here. It can't go on like it is.
That's right.
Somebody's going to get shot, somebody's going to get hurt. People have gotten hurt. Obviously, somebody got killed. So you need to think about what your business model is and how can you change it to try not to attract. You can't have every third or fourth, patron showing up, being somebody that's showing up with a felony warrant.
yes,
That's
sir.
probably not a good, good
Base
slice of
society.
society to appeal to.
Yes, sir.
And it is affecting your customers that don't have any problem. To have those people in there, it makes it, tougher on everybody that comes in.
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of bars in our township, and they all have liquor license, and we don't have a problem.
As much as.
Very seldom. And when you say a bar and a club, well, I know a bar and a club, from my perspective, they're similar. I don't see any dissimilarities. And I still remain the way I still feel the way what I shared earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
If you really care about the community and you're going to continue providing that level of service to the level of individuals that you're serving and taking the risk, not only risking our police officers' lives, but the neighboring communities' lives, then at some point, I would support shutting you down. But you need to look at that and do some brainstorming together, and you can modify it so it's an attractive bar, restaurant.
I would say too that, and I've been on this board for quite a few years, I cannot ever remember there being an establishment in the township that we, a liquor establishment that we really fought their permit. I don't think we've ever done that. One. There might have been one, but it's been very, very rare. Almost routinely, people come through here, there's transfers and things, and we approve them. So it's not that we're anti-drinking or anything like that, but it's the crime and the violence and the safety concerns that are, I think, paramount with us. So I think you need to go back and say, why are we the outlier? Why are we the only ones that has had this turn into what it's turned into? And see if there are some changes you can make to attract a little different clientele. You can still be successful. Quite frankly, I think you could probably do better. But
How about we give it a try? I just want to tell the court I apologize if I'm bringing you up, because I promote not bringing people out here. I apologize if I'm bringing my element to y'all community. I mean no harm. I mean no harm.
all right, thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
I think I have one question. It's a safety concern that I have. In the parking lot, because they have tried to, do it with the podium, please. The police have tried to do away with a lot of the parking that we had. So our parking lot now is pretty full. Well, the police, when they're pulling people over, are blocking entrances, they're blocking the driveways for people to get around, and it's causing a huge problem, and it's a safety issue. Fire department couldn't get in even if they wanted to, because the police officers are blocking the roadways. So what can we do about that? What do I do about that? Because I need to make sure that there is free-flowing movement in the parking lot.
My understanding is what you could probably do about it is make sure that you don't attract people who have warrants out for their arrest, so that the police don't have to arrest them when they scan their license plate and find out they have warrants and warrants. I mean, I don't know how to do that, but I'm just telling you that's what congestion.
Okay, I was pulled over. I don't have a warrant. I don't get in trouble. I was pulled over for a front license plate. Now, out in the parking lot here, there's 2 cars without front license plate. Yeah, it's against the law. I was in an accident. Okay, understandable. But the thing is, it's people that don't have warrants, that don't have felonies, that don't have guns on them, that are also getting pulled over.
How many parking spaces you got?
I'm not exactly sure. I haven't actually counted. I know it's a
Nowhere
huge
near
lot.
enough for 425, 450 people.
Well, it depends on if people ride together, if they don't, if it's individual cars. I don't think I have 400 parking
And the
spots.
reason you lost all your parking spaces is because the owners of the businesses around you are tired of their patrons taking over their parking lots, leaving garbage, busting bottles, tearing up their stuff, so they posted their parking spaces for their businesses.
That's not.
That's why they all got.
I'm not gonna agree with that. Like she said, this isn't a place to dispute.
I'm just telling
But
you.
what my concern right now is to make sure that there's free flowing traffic in our parking lot and not being blocked. So that way, if something were to happen, the fire department can get through and other patrons can get through in or out.
You're part of the strip mall.
Yes.
And there are other businesses in that strip mall that would like parking. And the transmission place that's next door, completely out of the strip mall, is tired of his property being destroyed by the patrons. The strip mall across the street is tired of the same thing. That's why they posted all the properties.
They
For
posted it
customers
because you
only.
went to them and asked them to post it.
And that's why all the cars got towed.
But that you asked them to post it.
Nobody asked how they could solve the problem.
Okay. Like I said, I'm not gonna sit here and just, make a discussion of it. I just wanna find out what we can do to not block the roadway.
I think the bottom line is the police department's in charge of that discretion. What's a safe parking lot when they're there?
Right.
They're public safety officers.
It'll be up
It's
to
the
the
fire department's discretion to decide that. If they don't think it's causing a safety concern about what they're doing,
So should I
It's
have
not
the fire
for
department
us.
come
I
out there
can't
and see this?
micromanage.
I don't know the answer, and
I
I'm
think
trying
if
to.
the fire department getting out there, the police would move. I don't think, they don't leave their car and park it there. It can be moved if there's a fire or if there's an emergency vehicle that needs to get in. So it's not like it's parking along the street that's blocking the entrances and exits.
Okay.
It's readily movable. Just like if there was a stoplight that's blocking, holding up traffic, that can be moved, when I change it, people move. They can be moved out of the way if there's any emergency.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board this evening?
My name's Annette Rich, and property's 15 Ridgeway Road. And it's not, I just or need to know who to talk to about nuisance property and how it's handled, or what's being done, or the process for the township.
The property in question is 15.
No, that's my property.
That's your
The one next door, 13 Ridgeway, is vacant, and it's been vacant for years, and the second floor is falling into the first floor, and it's just bad.
Well, Chris Gilbert, who is normally in charge of that, is not here this evening. If I'm thinking correctly, though, didn't we appropriate to do a demolition, maybe Chief Leininger on Ridgeway?
That
Is
address.
that the one?
There's one that's been taken down. 11 was already taken down. That's almost 2 years
Is this the
ago.
one that's kind of light green? and dark?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, I did do a condemnation recommendation on that one.
Okay, so it's
But no, I don't know.
In process.
in the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't see it on the list here, so we had.
Okay.
Are you the next door neighbor?
Yes,
There was a for sale sign on there.
there is.
The last time I was there. So-
It is still for sale. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a problem with that
And
next
and
door.
I kind of felt for you with that situation, and that's why the recommendation was submitted. And we've seen that property deteriorate over the years, so.
It's
unfortunately.
definitely, it's had mold issues in the building there. I mean, he'd have a tenant in there for a year, and then he would take him out of there and clean it up again, and then put a new tenant in. But every year, he would move tenants out, and then get the mold out of the building. So,
If,
Yeah, I'll get your number before we
Okay.
leave, and I can have Mr. Gilbert call you and give you a
Okay.
full update on where we stand on that.
okay, that,
right, there is a specific statutory process we have to go through.
that's what I figured, yeah. I just don't know where it was, or I thought the county or township had gotten some money for that type of things, but how the houses get on that list is
Right,
unknown.
okay.
Okay.
Explain the whole process.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Hearing that there is not, do we have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of?
To discuss the employment of a public employee, including the potential discipline of that employee.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Burney? Aye. Mr. Farland?
Aye.
Ronald?
Aye.
On executive session.